We start today's show with something that I don't even exactly know how to properly explain this to you in a way that doesn't sound wildly emotional and aggressive. But you know what? I think this is cause for me to be done with, for the sake of professionalism, however much I was trying to conceal my disdain for the current U.S. president, it's gone. You're getting it all. Trump's playing some sick game with all of us. Now posting, after at midnight tonight, the most aggressive and economically destabilizing tariff approach since who knows when in U.S. history. He then, like he's playing some sort of sick joke with all of our lives, posts this. And after I read this, get ready, okay? Get ready. Because this is all real. This actually happened. This is not satire. We're going to look at the responses from Trump's administration. And it's a historically humiliating set of clips. But he wrote, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%. That's not the notable part, okay? That's also notable, but that's not it. Effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the United States and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So after saying, I promise I'm not pausing these tariffs, he does, which is good. I don't want these tariffs, except he's keeping a 10% baseline. But his proof, after they kept insisting that that's not happening, that they don't care. They don't care. The whole tariffs are going to bring jobs back. This is all just one big joke to them. Here's Levitt making this announcement.
We understand you have a lot of questions, so in the effort of transparency, we're here to talk about the president's latest statement regarding his America First trade plan. As you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries.
All right, then she reiterates it. This is doing irreparable damage. This flip-flop, I keep saying it. It would be one thing to impose a policy. That's crazy. But to go and create an environment where no one knows what the heck is going to happen in the next hour makes it impossible to make business decisions. Other countries are canceling their travel to the United States. Citizens in those countries are taking our things off the shelves. That's not reversing. They're pissed at us. They're still pissed at us because the chaos that Trump is creating is alienating us on the world stage, trust in our financial system, investments in our country. All of that's going away. And then whatever benefits he said were coming from the tariffs, he keeps pushing off and pausing. They probably weren't going to come from them. But even by his logic, we're only getting the negatives. We're getting all the backlash with none of the benefits, and they're just flip-flopping. Now, before getting back to the defenses that are truly cringy from these officials, remember that just yesterday, reporting about a 90-day pause being considered was called fake news by the White House. There's no connection to the truth at all. Especially when Scott Besson is about to claim in the clips that I keep referencing that this was the plan the entire time. Really? Because you were saying it was fake news that it was being considered. My goodness.
Spoke to Caroline Levitt, the White House press secretary, on the phone just a short time ago, and she tells me it is quote unquote fake news that the White House is considering a.
All right, it wasn't just that. You had Levitt at the podium saying this.
Hi, Kevin. It's clear the president has gotten the world's attention with these tariffs. Is he considering at all potentially holding off on imposing some of them before the deadline, or maybe later, reversing them because he's having these negotiations and having these good talks with other leaders?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He said he's not considering an extension or a delay. I spoke to him before this briefing.
He's not considering an extension or delay yesterday. Today, they're about to call it the art of the deal. And what they mean by that is that they got countries to call them and say, how do we get you to stop? Which they could have done because those countries, when Trump was threatening this, were already offering, how do we get you to stop? They could have done this without causing so much panic. 10% baseline still there. That's still going to have negative economic impacts. But meanwhile, longer economic discussion, but the trust and the belief in a stable U.S. economy and stable policymaking is a cornerstone of our influence domestically and internationally. And this sort of behavior gets none of the benefits that he says that are supposed to come of these policies, but does push away people from believing that involving themselves with us, our economies, our business is a logical decision. He himself said he wasn't going to do this.
Mr. President, the European Union back into the markets today, and would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are...
This was yesterday. This was yesterday. No one in the world can believe mother word that the U.S. president says now. So if he says, hey, we're going to make a deal with you where we won't economically punish you anymore if you'll give us these concessions, they can't believe that. If he says, hey, your alliance with us, instead of aligning with other countries that seek to undermine us like China, or Russia. If you align with them, that's a worse bargain than getting more economically intertwined with us or having other sorts of alliances with us. And here are the benefits of being in a relationship with us. You can't believe that. We have spent decades facilitating an environment where countries believe and trust us in many ways, despite our flaws. And there is a global order that is built on trust in the US dollar, in the US financial system, in US policymaking, and the US government in general. And we benefited from being that leader. And now openly, our allies are saying, we're looking elsewhere. We need to sever ties a little bit. Not completely. Obviously, we're always going to be a huge player, but we need to detach some of how dependent we've become on them, which is bad. They call it bad for us. Now let's get to these absurd defenses. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, says, this is good.
Negotiate. It took great courage for him to stay the course until this moment. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they're in this very spot, do not retaliate and you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff.
That's still brutal, by the way, for the whole world, 10%. But he says, took great courage for Trump to stay the course until this moment. The tariffs took effect this morning at 12:01. This morning, they took effect. It took courage for Trump to stay the course for like a few hours. What are we talking about, Scott? You're ridiculous, Scott. And then he says, see, this is the genius. Countries that chose not to retaliate in a few days, they're being rewarded by only a 10% tariff now, even though Trump told us that the tariffs were how we brought jobs back to America. But now I guess he's saying that's not the case. it is a sick game because Trump wanted to see, I guess, I'm not even going to try to explain him in any compelling way, but let's just assume maybe he wanted to see who would respond and who wouldn't. Instead of making demands, I keep saying it, make a demand, just make one. What is it? What do you want? Get it from them. Instead of this weird, I'm going to test them and see without telling you what I want, I'm just going to hurt you and see if you punch back. And if you don't, maybe we'll drop it to 10%. Then Levitt says, what do you think she said? What do you think she called this? Cole, any ideas? What do you think she called it? Cole doesn't know. Jaded. The art of the deal.
Excuse me, Raquel, if I could just add to what the secretary said. Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what
I give up. This is the dumbest administration ever. What does she think? What kind of substances do you have to be on to come out and go, it's interesting because I think many of you missed the art of the deal? Do you mean causing so much economic uncertainty and lasting economic pain and a detachment of belief that we are a reliable trading partner so that Trump can throw that back up, so that if Trump told any of his friends he was about to make this announcement, they could have made a whole heck of a lot of money in the stock market? Because obviously once he announced this pause, the stock market went ballistic positively. It went up to the sky. There's probably so much corruption here too. Because if he just said, hey, look, I'm about to post this on Truth Social, the stock market's going to shoot up 6% or whatever immediately. He could have made a lot of money.
President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them. And that's exactly why more than 75 countries have called, because the United States of America is the best place in the world to do business.
What does she think she's saying? Of course, if the U.S. president starts a trade war with every country on the planet, including with the big ones, then people are going to call and say, hi, what's happening? How can we get him to stop? That's not cool. Do you know who else got any world leader on the phone when he wanted? Sleepy Joe. Do you know who else? Barack Obama. Do you know who else? Clinton. Bush. Every president can get whoever they want on the phone because they're the U.S. president. And do you know how even Trump first term made trade deals? He would make a trade deal. That's how. But do you know why Trump did tariffs this time instead of making a deal? Like he changed the tariff being imposed on dairy limit. So like a certain amount of dairy can go into Canada before any tariff, and we don't even hit that amount, so it's not tariff. And he got the limit raised by just asking and not going crazy. Maybe you could say if you don't agree to this deal, then we'll tariff. But he didn't do that. He just said tariff first, deals later, economic uncertainty meanwhile, then Basint.
All this was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And
listen to that. He said, This was Trump's strategy all along. Really? Because he said that it wasn't, Scott. Because he said that it wasn't.
Had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. And that you might even say that he goaded China into.
Oh, Scott, we got to work on your grin. That's creepy.
Say that he goaded China into
You could say that he goaded China. He goaded China into making both of our economies suffer. That's still in place. One of our largest trading partners now has 124% tariff on them. You could say that he goaded China. This was his plan all along, because now every Chinese product, when you look at stuff, it says made in China, made in China, made in China, 124% increase. He goaded them. Part of the deal.
You might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
No, you're coming up with all of that afterward. Yeah, you said don't retaliate, but then some people were saying all this was permanent. It is depraved. How about you just be an adult, lay out your list of demands, present them to countries, tell them what the punishment will be if they don't agree to it, and then impose those punishments if they don't agree to it. But then, because we're the United States of Mother America, they'll agree to it. But you don't even know what you want. You just like thumping your chest. You feel too small some places, so you want to feel real big on the world stage. That's what this is. Or some corrupt attempt to game the system. Who knows? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll keep trying. I mean, these videos become wildly irrelevant 2 seconds after they're posted because the news changes every 3 seconds. But if you appreciate these updates, I appreciate you. And if you'll click the subscribe button, that's awesome. And then the join button below, that's even more awesome.